I'm Tony Craig. I play Jack Huey on Due South.
I am Catherine Bruyere.
Hey everyone, this is Ramona Milano, otherwise known as Francesca Vecchio.
This is Paul Haggis, and you're listening to Due South by Southeast.
I wish this podcast would carry me away, but while talking to Squee and Michelle get a word in edgeways, record over a bottle of rum on the dock of Southampton Bay. Hey, Due South, that is what we're talking about. Due South. Saddle up my microphone, get deep in bed, girl, a bone. Due South by Southeast.
Hello and welcome to a rather special edition of Due South by Southeast. This week I am not joined by Michelle and Nicola, who are, Michelle is actually off being one of our fine NHS nurses today, which we salute, of course. And Nicola is just watching from the other room. Instead, I'm joined by a rather special guest. He's the man without whom we would not be watching Due South right now, and we wouldn't be enjoying it in the form it is. You might remember him from such TV shows as The Witches of Eastwick. You might remember him from such films as Passchendaele and from of course, Men with Brooms, along with many other. You might even remember him from a little TV show called Due South. Please welcome to Due South by Southeast, Mr. Paul Gross. Hello, Paul.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. You were just saying it's a bit cold but beautiful over there in Canada today.
Yeah, it is. It's been quite cold, actually. It's about 20 below right now, and there's a lot of snow where I am, south side of Toronto. It's gorgeous. Snowshoes, skis, it's perfect.
See, the only thing we Brits have is to complain about the weather, and I've got nothing for that. Like, it's just below zero here. I feel like a wuss now.
I know, but you're very soft. It's a soft country.
We have our moments, so we have our moments. So I was reminded today by one of our fans that it's actually 6 years ago today you got the Order of Canada.
Really?
Were you aware that it was the anniversary today?
I wasn't. Oh, that's fantastic.
What was that moment like?
It's actually quite amazing. I mean, the first at first I think I was in our place in New York, and I got a call. And it was kind of a scratchy line, and it was somebody from the government, and maybe asking me to do, I don't know what it was, to be on a jury, an arts jury or something. And I actually said, I don't have time for this. Sorry, I'm just kind of preoccupied at the moment. And then I hung up. And then the person called again and said, no, please listen to me. I think you do have time for this. This is what we're planning. It was the Order of Canada. I went, oh, and I think she said, and would you accept that? Oh, I absolutely would, I think I said. But at first I didn't have, it all seemed kind of vaguely theoretical or something until the actual ceremony. And then I was just aware of how extraordinary it was that I was included in a group of people who were vastly more accomplished than I am in much more complicated fields, like decoding the genome of the human heart, for instance. And that's not people I ordinarily have a conversation with. And I did feel I thought like the interloper who kind of snuck in the back door. I mean, what am I doing here? These people have all actually done something. So it was very humbling. And it was also really, I mean, it is quite it's sort of an extraordinary thing. I imagine the same as being, the feeling of being knighted in England, where it is quite a weird fraternity you suddenly enter. Not that it makes any difference to my day-to-day life, but it is really a wonderful thing to be recognized by in that way. I mean, it's quite
I mean, I could imagine any of the many awards you've won at this stage must be fantastic. But when it's your country, that's something kind of just bigger and a bit different, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is in a way that I hadn't anticipated. It felt quite meaningful. I mean, very meaningful, profoundly. And I don't know, I kind of use that word humbling, but it's because you don't really think about yourself in those terms. You don't think so much about whether you're having impact on people or not, or making some kind of a difference. So to have that recognized, it forces you to kind of look at yourself a little bit and think, wow, that really was something. Because I'm kind of always forward moving. It's not really, I don't spend an awful lot of time thinking about what I have done. It's sort of what am I doing now? What will I contemplate doing in the next phase of things? So it was really, as you say, I have received a number of awards, but that one was most extraordinary.
Yeah, that's spectacular. So we have got, just very quickly, I don't usually do this, but given that there's so many people who are joining us today, we've got a few who've got sort of special occasions who are kind of people I think kind of worthy of giving a shout out. First of all, I did want to give a shout out to Michelle Sewell, if you wouldn't mind joining me and just saying big hello to, she would usually be with us today. She's working as an NHS nurse right now, right on the front lines. She's helped out with COVID, with some of the COVID treatments, as well as working in the hospital in general. So if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick shout out to Michelle.
Michelle, you are heroic. I wish you were here, but you're doing the important stuff. Thank you.
And equally, someone who is joining us right now, I believe, is Ines Stepat, who is a firefighter who's 51 today. And she wants just a quick shout out from you, if you wouldn't mind.
Ines, great to
apparently you've
imagine you here. And I'm, again, everyone in the front line, you're really something else. This has been a long, hard haul for everybody, and we're not out of it yet. And we need the people like you the most. And so thank you.
Just going to slightly change the view because we're losing you underneath our little banner there in the corner. So,
should I
excellent.
go up?
So,
no.
Is that okay if you can just? I'll just do a little something.
Better?
That's great. Yeah. Sorry, you're just getting lost under the logo, which would be a criminal thing. And a big shout out to anyone whose birthday, anniversary, whatever it is today, who has asked for a shout out. Unfortunately, we can't get to you all. So we've got questions from all over the globe today, so I'll get straight to it. I want to, though, focus back on when you were starting as an actor personally. Where did it all begin for you?
Oh, sorry. Can you say that again?
Just how it got started for you as an actor, first of all, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm not 100% sure, really. It's just something I think that I always kind of liked doing. I was a bit of a show off as a kid, as my mother would say, and or used to say. And I had a great drama teacher when I was in high school in Washington, D.C., and he was just a wonderful guy. And I thought, this just feels like a great place to be doing this sort of. And then it also coincided, I suppose, a little bit before that. My mother had taken me to Stratford, Ontario, and it has a big theatre festival. And I saw William Hutt in King Lear. And I don't remember anything much about the production because I think it was like 11 or 12 or something. But I do remember thinking, ooh, I'd like to be part of that world in some capacity. So I think it kind of started pretty early, but then it was compounded by the fact that I just didn't really like mathematics. So I kept figuring out a way to not do it because we moved around a lot. So I could convince the new school board that math was not required of me in the previous school board. And so I managed to pretty much stop math at about the end of grade 8. And then you're suddenly useless for the sciences. You can't anything without. And I stopped, in those days, that was around about long division. I mean, I still don't even know what algebra is. If somebody says the word, I think, oh yes, it's something to do with science, but I have no idea what algebra consists of. So I was really kind of forced into the arts, and I have no particular visual capacity. So it seemed like I had to go into the acting. So it was kind of process of elimination.
I'm very impressed you managed to convince teachers another school just didn't do maths, and you managed to do that several times.
Well, this is pre-internet, so they couldn't really look it up, and they were kind of late, so they didn't bother to call. So you could say, no, it really just was not required of me. Although I can't imagine why that was persuasive, because you'd think mathematics is fairly standard. Yeah, but
that's what I'm thinking. Like, this just proves to me that you could sell anything.
I don't know. That was a good one, though. I regret it, though, to be honest. I wish I had, because I did develop quite an interest in physics. The more the sort of abstract side of it as I got older, and they would go into certain amount of mathematic conversation. It absolutely means nothing to me. So I would listen to Stephen Hawking. Honestly, I have not one clue what he's talking about, unless it's sort of in a more poetic form.
I think that's most of us didn't know what Stephen Hawking was talking about. I think it'll be years in the future we'll be still working it out.
Yeah, we'll still be going, what was he saying?
It's very impressive, I know, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah. I don't. It feels like, well, I mean, it's such a creature, such a unique, extraordinary human that I remember one quote of his saying, I was getting ready for bed, which is quite a process, as you can imagine, because of his illness. And he said, and I was thinking about the event horizon of a black hole. I'm getting to bed thinking, should I brush my teeth? Yeah, no, like not too many people can say. Not the brushing the teeth, the event horizon.
And for you, did the music? Yeah, I like to think that was the way around you meant it. With the music, did that come along early as well, or was that something which developed for you a bit later?
I always played guitar, I'm not a very good guitar player, but I always had guitars, and I always played. And then it was really kind of I guess I would have been in university that I had a friend there who was a great guitar player, and then we started playing and singing, and then that kind of continued, and then slowly got more and more involved, and then it just became too hard to sustain because you kind of really actually have to do that. You can't. It's pretty hard to have it as a hobby, and also have a hobby as writing, and a hobby as an actor, and then a hobby as a father. So something had to give, and the music kind of took a step back. But it was always great. And actually, David Keeley and I were talking the other day, and I think he's been working on songs. He's just actually released a little CD that I think is on iTunes. And so we decided as soon as we can, because we're in lockdown here as well, we're going to start getting together and maybe work some stuff up. So.
Oh, well, that takes care of a question which I got asked quite a lot to give to you about like your future plans with music and with working with David.
Yeah, I think he's crazy. I mean, I think he's got he said he's got something like 7 new songs, and he sent me a demo of one of them. It sounds great. So I think it ought to be fun. Maybe take a few weeks this year, and we might do it out in the Badlands. So just hunker down and play music and see if we've got enough stuff, and then we'll record it. We'll throw it out there.
And you mentioned there about lockdown. So what it's been like for you, and how's it kind of affected your work, the lockdown and everything with COVID?
Well, I mean, of course, the entire film and television business, particularly the theater has just shuttered, and there's some question as to how some of these companies will survive, and whether the smaller theater companies will make it through, and even some of the larger ones in Canada. It's been very hard for them. And television film has largely shut down. It's opened here and there. There are bits and pieces of things shooting, but it's been very difficult. Yeah. I did a little thing for, I think it was FX. When was that? Before Christmas or just after? And it's a really strange shooting on a set. Everybody masked up and shields, and you're rehearsing with somebody and you don't see their mouths until then you take everything off and you actually run the cameras, and then everything goes back on. Yeah, it's pretty strange. I think it will get a little simpler as time goes along. Productions will get more used to it, but It's just been really awful for a lot of people because a lot of productions that were fairly close to going, smaller movies and that kind of thing, couldn't afford the insurance or couldn't hold their financing together. So there's an awful lot of stuff that's fallen apart, and we'll see what happens when we come out the other side of it. I mean, independent film distribution, film worldwide was in quite a state because of the sort of diminishing audiences at the cinema, and who knows what the effects of all of this will be. It may be that a lot more people just aren't interested in going out in gatherings, or it may be quite reverse, that all of a sudden when it's lifted, everybody wants to go out and go crowd into the cinema. So I think there's a lot of big questions. As for me personally, it's been fine. I have absolutely no complaints. In fact, you become very aware of just how staggeringly privileged you are. I mean, I have this place in the country outside of the city, and there are many days go by where the COVID seems very distant, and the problems that a lot of people are suffering, I don't feel at all. So I'm quite aware of that. Although we have been trying to, when we can, we have friends of ours who don't have, live in small apartments, come up and spend time so they can get out and walk in the woods and with their kids. And so but for us, it's been fine. Apart from spending lots of time looking at the news around the world, which is fairly, I think it's hard for everybody in this elastic pandemic time I don't know how to describe that. I suppose it is. That's what it feels like. Time has just become really odd, as though we're all trapped in some kind of state of suspended animation, waiting for life to begin again. And I think that's extraordinarily difficult for so many people. And I obviously, I can't at all complain. And if I start to feel, pathetically sorry for myself, I just have to remind myself that I'm lucky, and a lot of people aren't, and I know a lot of those people aren't. So it's such a hard time that the whole world is in right now, and not just because of the pandemic. I think politically there's so much unrest, a great deal of instability, and I think everybody's feeling a level of a kind of stress disorder that's hard to know exactly how to deal with it. I think if we can start to move around and gather again, then a lot of that will settle a bit. But I am seeing it a lot around me and people in my own extended family. How's it been for you?
Well, I will say, it's been an unusual time. I mean, I now work I actually work for the NHS, doing some of the follow-up calls about COVID. And so the job I do right now wouldn't exist previously. I'm working from home doing that, which has kind of had its own challenges. It's just such an unusual time. Like you say, I think it's just hit people in a lot of weird ways, a lot of kind of mental health issues coming out for a lot of people. And I will actually say, not to blow smoke too much to you, but doing things like this and having people like you kind of coming on and talking, I know makes a huge difference to a lot of people. So I know I speak for a lot of people for thanking you for doing this today. It does make a huge difference to people.
No, it's my pleasure. It's great.
Yeah. Getting on to the Due South of it all, of course. So when did you first hear about Due South, and what were your first impressions when you saw the script?
I was actually living in Los Angeles, and I was kind of making the rounds and auditioning for things, and I got a call. My agent got a call I got a call from my agent who said there is this script called Due South, and Paul Haggis is the writer, and it's be produced by Robert Lantos in Toronto. And at the time that I was there, I wasn't really looking to get into a series because you had to sign on for a long time, and I was sort of iffy about that. And my agent said, well, I've read it. It's fantastic. And I said, well, I don't even want to read it because I don't want to kind of get seduced by it, So then a year went, I didn't look at it. And I think a year went by as they were trying to cast it with somebody else, and they never seemed to find anyone that they felt was right. And then it came back, and he just said, it's a great offer. And I just read the first 10 pages because I mean, he knew that I would probably get completely hooked. But I was laughing out loud by the end of the second page, I think, or third page. It was so well written. It was so funny. It was also completely weird. It wasn't like anything else that was going on television at the time. And the part was just bewildering. I mean, I could kind of see what the character might be, but I couldn't understand how you would ever go about doing that. I mean, I really just thought, I have no idea how to do this, which actually seemed like the perfectly good reason to do it. So
Yeah.
Started, yeah. And then it was kind of, you know, on the bubble, as they used to call it in LA, where you have lots of support, but not quite enough to make it a hit. So it was kind of in this in-between world for quite a while. And even the pilot, I don't think most people thought it would get picked up and ordered into a series in that first year. So I remember somebody calling me from CBS saying, I love this show and I want to help me sell it to everybody that we should order it. She said, what should I say? And I said, I just think it's like a great antidote right now. Just say it's one of the few, it would be one of the few shows on television with a big heart. She said, are you mad? I can't go into a boardroom full of cynical programming executives and tell them we should order this because it's got a heart. I said, oh, well, then don't ask me my advice. Good thing I'm not a programming executive.
But it seems like that's always the way. The shows with heart and like which actually managed to write it sincerely and without being saccharine, which is a kind of hard line to do. They're the ones which seem to have the most difficulty getting made. But when they do and they hit the hardest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's kind of, you know, television is such an odd beast. And particularly now, it's very weird compared to any other time in its history. It was a very tiny operation for a long time. There were a few channels, and now there's just a proliferation of them, obviously, and there's just such an incredible wide variety of stuff that you can watch. Then it was still quite, even with Due South, it was still quite contained, and so there was a kind of inherited wisdom of what will and will not work with audiences, and they were nervous of going outside of the parameters of that. So they Due South was just weird to them. It wasn't, is it a cop show? Is it a comedy? Is it a, you know, they couldn't really figure it out. And they had a hard time at CBS figuring out how to sell it originally, you know, to present it to an audience in advertising, because, well, what is it exactly? Well, and I think that's, in those days, you know, a cop show was a cop show. It was exactly, they were all more or less the same, but you would kind of change up the location and what clothes the people wore. And this didn't fit into any one of those boxes. So.
I did want to talk a bit about the casting straight from the get-go in that pilot, which Gordon Pinson, obviously, for instance, was in few scenes really in that first pilot. What was it kind of like working with him, and like how important was it to get just that casting dead right from the beginning?
Well, I mean, just about everyone will say this, I think, who works in this field, is that casting is kind of everything. It doesn't matter. Everything else sort of doesn't matter, because in the end, all the audience is really looking at are the people who are those people, who are those characters. And so if you get that wrong, it doesn't matter how great the writing is, or the photography, or the costuming, or anything. It'll all fall apart. And I think, I mean, Gordy is such an iconic figure in Canada. He's been, like, I just called him either Dad or he was Mr. Canada. and the Maritimes, from Newfoundland, so he has that whole kind of oddball pedigree. And we didn't know each other. I mean, actually, I maybe we had met before, but I think I'm pretty sure we met in the bar at the hotel in Skagway when we were in Alaska when we were shooting the pilot. And he was really weird at the time because he had lost a play that he'd been writing on his computer. It crashed and he'd lost it. So he was in a state of mourning. So my first encounter with Gordy was odd. I mean, he was in a bar in Alaska that used to be a whorehouse, and he had lost a play, and he was in mourning, and we were drinking scotch. So it was gradually it normalized. And our relationship became and he's a wonderful guy, crazy as a loon. He has the most whacked out creative ideas, and we laughed our heads off all the time. It was a fantastic relationship on screen and off. It still is. And I mean, the whole idea of him when I was running the show, but because I had to try to convince him to come back, and he said he wanted to be more involved in the plots. And I said, "Well, you're dead. Like, I'm not sure how you can participate." And he said, "Well, I can point to clues, and also there's stuff I can do. And I need a place. I need an office." I said, "Where?" "Well, it could be in your office." I said, "Well, you can't. That's like the real world where the guy had my office." He said, "Well, I could have an office. Where?" "In the closet." And I remember laughing and thinking, he's crazy. And then I woke up the next morning and thought, yeah, well, why couldn't he? There could be an office in there. Most people would open the door and there'll just be a closet. And then I open the door and there's this office in the north. So that was all his idea. So he was always coming up with these crazy things. Yeah, he's one.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also ask about kind of working with David Marciano, and how did you get, like, it seems like the chemistry just hit from the first frame, and it just kind of like that set the standard, which just continued throughout the show.
Yeah, it was very, very quick. And I didn't know David at all, and we met in I guess we met in Los Angeles, and I can't recall whether I think I was helping with screen tests or something like that. And he was there, and he was just wonderful. Like, immediately, his look is in everything about David has absolutely nothing to do with me, and vice versa. We have there's absolutely no common touchstones in our background. And the only thing that we have in similar is that we're actors. And so that it always had that kind of weird, I don't really understand you feeling all the time, because I don't think we ever did, you know. And I think that it just worked on camera. And that's also something that's a little hard that it's a very mysterious thing, why two people on camera click and others don't. And, but with him, yeah, it was immediately apparent. And it was also quite easy to execute. And it wasn't like we had to think about what our two characters' reactions were to something, because whatever I would think, it absolutely got nothing to do with whatever he would think, and vice versa. So we were always at some kind of oppositional point in the scenes, and then they just played. Yeah, and he's also hilarious. Yeah. So
it felt like it was perfectly written so that Ray had, you know, a Benny inside him which wanted to come out, and like he wanted to be a good guy, but he kind of like just had other instincts sometimes, and Benny brought that out in him, and Ray vice versa. Like, you know, Benny sometimes wanted to step out the box of these kind of lines which he had drawn around him, and you know, Ray got to bring that out of him. It was just a perfect mirror kind of situation, it felt.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, and that they both helped each other, that they helped each other's shore up those aspects of the personality that were lacking, I think, or needed a certain kind of course correction. I think they were very good for each other, just humanly. And
it just made both of them, yeah, it just made them both like a little bit more rounded as a person, like with that extra element from the other that the other gave them.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope so. But I always felt like when we were working on it, that when you'd sort of know that you'd hit the sweet spot of the scene, if it felt like we had been able to finish what the other one started the scene with, if that makes any sense. So that we were contributing to each other. Yeah.
I mean, a question I'm sure you must get a lot. Carrie Ann Strutz asked, do you see your co-stars from Due South still to this day?
No, actually not that often. I've seen Gordy on and off. David, of course, lives in, I saw him a little while ago, and he was in Toronto working on something. And it was great to get together with him again. I used to see everybody a little bit more, but we've all sort of, you know, it's been quite a long time now, so we kind of moved along. Callum Rennie replaced David in the last chunk. We remained quite close friends. But he's in Vancouver, and so I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him in a while. Yeah, no, that's odd that I was remained quite close to a lot of the directors as well. Sadly, as George Bloomfield passed away a few years ago, and then awfully Steve DeMarco died earlier this year. So yeah, which is you seem very young for that. But then I guess, we get older. Yeah, but it was kind of, I mean, one of the things about that show that was a little bit strange, we worked so hard, our hours were so long that nobody really hung out, or met up afterwards. Like, I was just always exhausted, and the thought of then going and spending more time with people that I just spent 16 hours with just wasn't really appealing. And we did spend so much time on the set together. We spent a lot of, there are lots of conversations, and we got to know each other, I think, really well. So it's a bit weird, yeah. Now that I think of it, we did sort of all drift a little bit. But then so many people were at certain ages where suddenly their lives are going to start to shift, or you just had children, or there was a lot of, and other people went on, of course, to do other things. But for the time that we were together, it really was a family, and that's the cast and the crew. I mean, everybody was in the same, it felt like just an extended family most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, something which does come up quite a lot is the rumors about a Due South reboot, and Angela Riley has asked, are the rumors of a Due South reboot true, and anything you can share with us if so?
Well, the rumors, there have always been rumors that it was going to get restarted. There is some conversation going on right now, but I don't think I can share any of it without all of the other people killing me. There is absolutely nothing has been formalized, and it's not like it's sold anywhere or anything like that. But we are starting to have conversations about how it might be brought up and in what kind of configuration. It's a very different time. So in terms of bring it back in whatever form, it's trying to figure out how you bring that up to today's climate. And I don't think we know that yet.
I think we could do with Benton's Hope about now.
Yeah, I think we do need a little something, don't we? Yeah, there are conversations about that. That's all I will be held to.
Well, I mean, something which actually, it does actually lead on to my next question from Jane Harvey. She asks, what do you think keeps Due South so timely? And I think it still is. Like, we've been watching back the show recently for this show, and just other than the 90s fashion, which is always just fun to see in the show, I think kind of the plots you can just do right now again, I think.
Probably. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that just is different in terms of what we now kind of think about the attitudes towards policing and the politics of policing. And, a lot of stuff has actually shifted. And Due South existed at a time when there was a kind of fixed, that it wasn't in transition in a way. It was sort of a fixed thing. And I think that's somehow in the the wallpaper of the show and whatever the decoration is in the background, I mean, not literally, but in what is the society like, that's where it has to exist. And so you have to really have a look at what all of that means. But yes, I mean, I think the hopeful, trusting nature of the central character is always welcome. I'm sure, like a good person, as opposed to, so much drama is really populated with very interesting but incredibly flawed people. Not that Benton was perfect, but that it was basically upright and good. And we don't see a lot of that even still today on television or in film.
No.
I mean, it's kind of,
like I say, I think we could do with him right now.
Yeah. It's sort of a weird achievement that Haggis did, was to create a character who's good and not have that big dull. I mean, the reason we have so many characters is they're just sort of dramatically more interesting. You know, if Richard III were a lovely guy who handed out presents to everybody and took care of all of the peasants, we probably wouldn't have a play about him. You know what I mean? So
I think the reverse. The thing might be true though, that people say, for instance, Superman, like he's kind of a hard character to write for the very same reasons. For me, I think when he is faced with such a difficult world, and a world which sometimes wants to do so much wrong, like it's the neuroticness of being the one good person, I think, and trying to put that into the world, I think, is where you kind of get the drama.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess I'm just saying that it was such a peculiarity. It was not the norm, and it is not the norm now. So it's a question of figuring out how that character exists today, I suppose, is what the struggle will be. But we are talking about it.
Exciting. We've got Micah Colton at age 6, who's watching today, has asked a question. There's 2 questions. She would like to ask whether you got hurt jumping off buildings or cars, and if you were allowed to do much of your own stunt work. Also, what's your favorite Due South quote so she can put it on her bedroom wall?
Oh, well, I did do a fair number of the stunts that weren't completely dangerous. And I'll tell you why, not because I'm particularly brave or skilled. It just made my day a little shorter. Because if you have to have the stuntman in, you have to wait around until they've done the stunt. And then wherever they land, then you go in and you do your piece. So if I just would fall off the car, it made it a little easier to do. Like a shorter, because I didn't want to keep working. And yes, we all got hurt a little bit, because when you're doing so much of that stuff, it's you're going to fall down or you're going to bump into something, but nothing grievous. The worst I had was a dislocated shoulder, but other than that, fine. And I really don't know if I have a favorite quote, but I think it actually just is the one that he uses all the time, which was something my father always said, and many other people did as well. But my dad's thing was, "Thank you kindly." And I think that's my favorite.
Yeah, it really sums up the character somehow. Just as that little phrase at the end of everything. We've got I did reach out to a few of your co-stars and people we've interviewed on here. One came back to me, and it's Catherine Bruyere. I asked if she had any questions for you. So she said, maybe did you know that she almost drooled on you by mistake during the scene where she was tending to your wounds in Julieta's bleeding due to a partially frozen lip? Were you aware of this?
Due to a partially frozen what?
Lip.
I did not. I do now.
She said it was due to that. I think there's a lot of our female audience who might have drooled over for you for other reasons, but
this just sounds not entirely honest, Catherine. But we'll go along with that. There was something wrong with your lip. Okay.
Like just off the back of that, maybe you could talk a bit about kind of the relationship between Fraser, not only and Elaine, but also the other kind of female characters on the show. And what was that like to play?
Well, that was kind of one of the odd things about him as a character to get used to, is to not be aware that he had an effect on others.
Yeah.
To not be aware that he was attractive or that he was desirable or anything. Like, to really not have that at all is quite a strange thing to play, actually. Like, particularly if you can see it happening in front of you and just be able to learn how to be oblivious to it. So that took me a while to get kind of used to. But then it's sort of wonderful to play because the relationship doesn't have anything to do with the sexual aspect of a relationship. It is just person to person. So it was wonderful to go to work and do that, minus all of the normal complexities of life.
And I don't like to go too fanboy on this, but like I am going to ask one slight fanboy question, if I might. And I asked this when we spoke to Francesca herself. So do you think Franny and Benton did end up together in that show?
I don't know. Because I could see yes, they might have, and then no, they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I think it was
Ramona Edwards not that they did.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that would have been a good thing.
Fair enough. I did really love the fact that in that episode they did leave it to the imagination as to whether or not it had happened. It was just left in a mystery at the end of that one.
Yeah. Some of it is much better left to your imagination.
Yeah, it is indeed. Victoria's Secret. Now, of course, this is an episode which always comes up. It's a lot of people's favorite. Is that one which felt like you were doing something special in those episodes?
Yeah. I mean, they were really beautifully written, and the shooting of it was great. And also it was great to do because it was, it was his history and his most human side and his most, and to a great extent, his most private side, because he never really talked about those things. And that's also an odd thing about his characters, how not closed, but how little he played his life kind of close to his chest. And I thought that was wonderful when it started to come around. I remember talking to Paul about it. We really should have something about his past, because I think it would be good to know like an anchor to his personality. And I thought that was just such fantastic writing, and Melina was so beautiful in it. And yeah, that was really, and it was lovely to do it. It was really wonderful stuff to film.
Yeah, it was just the way it kind of blurred his lines so much in that episode, and kind of he was about to kind of like make that final step of going with her just at the end. It just so much pathos of that, and it was kind of like echoed for so many episodes afterwards. It was just a great engine for story, it seemed.
Yeah. And those are they're sort of hard to do, those kind of. Maybe the other way of putting it is Due South was always great too, because the characters were unfolding it wasn't just the same episode every week. I mean, there was a fair bit of similarities in between the hours, but there was this thing that was unfolding about their backgrounds and their histories. And I think for the audience to really have a sense of him, a deeper sense of him, that was just perfect. It couldn't have been better.
Yeah. We've got another question. This one's from Margaret McAllister, another one of our fantastic NHS workers. She turned 50 last week, so shout out there. We've already covered this about the music with David Kelly, so we'll skip past that, but hi to Margaret. And I mean, I'll ask a question off the back of that. Music seems such just a key part of Due South. I actually watched an episode at one stage. They put them on YouTube, but without the music. And it was just like, this just seems, it was like something had been sucked out of it. Yeah. It was just so key, the music to it. What were your feelings like? And did you get to hear a lot of that as you were doing the episodes, or was that kind of all later?
We never really knew what this purchased songs would be, the songs that we bought to put in. Although I think actually now I have this funny feeling that Paul had told me that he had a Sarah McLachlan's song for Victoria's Secret. And so that I thought, oh my God, that's going to be, then when you have that in your mind, it's you really can kind of see it as you're doing it, see it, hear it. But it does add that layer of acting. But a lot of the time we didn't know what the songs were going to be. but the music score itself, we kind of they had settled into a pattern that was really great. And so you could kind of feel it on some of the scenes, or it would be unconsciously sort of running in the back of your mind. And I think, between Jack Lyons and Jay Simcoe and everybody who worked on it, it was just, I thought it was like a perfect soundtrack. But it was always really fantastic.
I mean, there were whole episodes. There were episodes where you'd have the whole song play out, and for most shows, you would never take the time to do that. But it was just perfect, not only for setting the scene, but also you have so many bits of business going on during like the music playing. It was just incredible and very brave, I think, of shows to do that.
Yeah, I guess you're kind of right. I haven't really seen that much that I can think of that would be similar, other shows. But there was that thing we would have action, and sometimes it was just sort of action music accompanying it, but other times there would be songs that lifted the action up into another. So the whole episode would lift up into another level because of the support of the music. It's really unbelievably critical in anything you're doing, whether it's a film or television, what that soundtrack is. It's so much of how if you just did an experiment and you see a bit of action and you put on one song and you put on a diametrically opposed song, everything about that action sequence changes depending what the tune is. And so finding the right approach to it is really critical. And there were a lot of people who are contributing to all of that. And then I think the collective kind of what we arrived at was really great. Yeah, I know. I always loved it. I liked looking at the episodes to see oftentimes what the music would be, like what was coming in. And it was a lot of times really surprising. Oh, that's fantastic. I never was
that. Julie Ranu has put, what happened to your Mountie uniform? Now, a lot of people ask this. And do you have any memories of when you visited the UK during the 90s?
I have no idea what happened to the Mountie uniforms. I had a bunch of them. I had a lot. I had ones that were wrecked. I had ones that were lighter because the heavy surge in the summer was just too, when it would be really super hot and humid, it was too heavy. So I had light ones, heavier ones, even heavier ones, lined ones for the winter. I had ones where the arms were ripped off. I had a lot of them, and I have no idea where they've all gone. Somewhere, somebody's got them. Some sneaky person has a lot of Mountie up.
So the ones with the arms ripped off just sound like they're kind of a hipster choice.
I can't remember why. I know I had one with the arm ripped off, but I can't remember why it was ripped off. Anyway, there were a lot that had bullet holes in them because we put squibs in them. So not a lot. There were a few. Yeah, it seemed I had a ton. I didn't at first though. There was just the one, and it was kind of started to realize fairly quickly. We're going to need a few more. I do remember that trip to England. It was crazy. I can't remember doing signing things at somewhere on Oxford Street. I can't remember. It was a
HMV.
HMV, yeah, that was just wild.
Yeah.
And I have to say though, my very favorite thing about the whole trip, which was quite whirlwind, and I don't think I ever actually quite got over the jet lag, because I pretty much landed and then had to, dawn, and then had to go straight into doing interviews. So I was a bit goggle-eyed. But I remember two things. I remember going on to some breakfast show, and the guy I was following had just released his first CD, and it was quite an exceptional CD, and it was, I don't know, like 100 different tracks of train engine sounds, which was incredibly foreign to me. Even having spent a fair bit of time in England, I do know about train spotters. It's not a big thing in North America, but I never thought you'd put that on a record. And so it was kind of, I couldn't get over it. I sat down and I was still kind of, I want to hear more of these train sounds.
Paul, I just hope you haven't all these years thought that's what we get down to in the UK. We do not listen to train sounds as a rule. That's an oddity. That's an outlier.
I think this guy sold a lot of records. It is pretty fascinating. Anyway, that was one standout event. And then what else? Oh, Paul, I don't know if it was that trip. It might have been because Haggis and I went to see a production. I won't even name it. Doesn't matter what it is, but it was something in the West End, and it was like a big musical, which it's not like my favorite thing. There were a lot of plays that at the time I thought, well, if we've got one night out, I'd like to go and see this or that. And he said, no, I think we've got these wonderful tickets that BBC has bought. Oh, okay. So we go to this musical, which was fine, but somebody died in the course of it. Like I actually keeled over, a very elderly man died we were up in the balcony, so it was on the sides, and a guy came in, and it was the whole procedure of it was silent. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. It was horrifying, and yet in hindsight, it's like bizarre that a St. John's ambulance guy showed up, felt for a pulse, turned to the wife and said, and she, in such a restrained way, went, like there was no crying and the show kept going, and then the ambulance fellow tilted him back and dragged him out the fire escape. I thought, that is very English. See, that really would not happen in North America. I think in Canada it would be, we have to stop the show. Somebody has passed away. And then Haggis said, well, we should, it was like in the first half, he said, we should see about getting our money back. I said, what are you talking about? In the first place, we didn't buy the ticket. And secondly, what we are going to say? That your production is killing people? Like, and so then we wandered. It still was all those odd closing hours for food. And we were wandering around West End looking for something to eat. And there was nothing open except for Pizza Hut. So this was maybe our second night in London together. And there we were reduced to eating a pizza at Pizza Hut. It just seemed perfect somehow.
Although, you say about the British being reserved. I'm surprised people, after she went, people aren't going to like pull yourself together. That's a big reaction for the British,
No, I didn't go that far. It was extraordinary. Sad. But
wow. Yeah. We've got a question from the floor where it's one of our viewers at the moment. I'm sorry we haven't been able to pull your name through. You haven't given permission to StreamYard, but love Men with Brooms. I was going to go on to this. Are you a fan of curling in real life? I find it surprisingly addictive to watch during the Olympics. Me too. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about Men with Brooms? What a fantastic film, and kind of something which you put so much into.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's kind of weird because Robert Lantos, who was it was his company that produced Due South. I wanted to do. Actually, I think it was Passchendaele, and he said, "Well, you should maybe try something else first before you take on something that big." And he said, "Why don't you do? I think you should do a hockey movie." And I thought about that for a short bit of time. The problem for hockey in Canada is we think of it as our national sport. It's our sport. As a result, it's got there you are. It's got a lot of politics in it for Canadians. And I couldn't really figure out any way I was unable to see a simple way of doing a good hockey story. Plus, the other thing about hockey is it's really hard to photograph. It's a very fast game where it's not up and down. And the speed of it is difficult. And the other thing is that actors, if you did not grow up playing hockey, you cannot pretend that you know how to play hockey. Like, it is really hard to fake that. You have to have been on skates all your life. And so it's kind of limits what you can do.
Yeah.
And I think it may have been the Olympics. Anyway, curling was on, and I was not a particular fan. And I was watching it, and it is kind of, when you first see it, it is kind of funny. I soon learned that it is not. It's all quite serious. But when you first look at it, it's people with brooms and these rocks, and they're yelling, and it's slow. The other thing with curling is
it's so really deceptive as well. When I've seen it in the Olympics, it looks like it's so easy. Like, the basic rules are easy. Then being good at it's really hard. So
I said, no, I don't want to do a hockey movie, but I would be interested in trying to do something about curling, or with curling as the kind of background of it. So anyway, that was finally decided upon, and I wrote it with John Krzank, but neither of us had ever even actually been to a curling match when we'd finished the first draft. We had all sorts of books like Curling for Dummies and consultants that we could call, and then I finally went to I don't know, it wasn't one of the big Bonspiels. The first one I went to was something nearby, and I loved it. I thought, this is crazy fun to watch, because the tension of watching that rock just slowly go all the way down that ice is really pretty intense. And it is astonishing what they can do. And particularly when you get on the ice, almost inevitably everybody's going to fall down. And then you try to do that nice, long, slow thing, but you can't hold your balance and you fall over and your rock goes way over off to the left somewhere. I mean, it is really, really phenomenally difficult to be good at that. But yeah, no, I knew nothing about it. I was an inadvertent snob about it. But it's like anything, I think, if people are exceptionally good at it, it's really engaging to watch.
Yeah, and something I wanted to ask you about was both in Due South and in that movie, working with Leslie Nielsen. I have to compliment both you in that film and Makers Due South in Due South, the way it was written. It is one of the later performances by Leslie Nielsen where he was really well written for. They brought out his dramatic side as well as the comedy side. There are a lot of people, I think, who watched The Naked Gun and wrote for him in a very, very silly way, which I think is such a waste of such an actor. Whereas he was really at his best when he could.
Oh, I lost you.
Back in Naked Gun, the way he.
It might be my internet at this farm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you're back. Can you hear me? Am I clear enough? You're gone a little loud. Maybe I'll just start answering about Leslie. I didn't get all of your question. But yeah, I mean, Leslie started his life as a dramatic actor. I mean, he was born, I think, north of the Arctic Circle. He had rickets as a kid because they didn't have any fresh fruit or vegetables. And I think it was rickets. And then gradually he'd been moving south until he ended up in Los Angeles. But his early career, the biggest part of his career, was playing dramatic characters. I mean, he himself was a goofball, so that was always kind of part of his personality. And then finally, it got capitalized on, and he had this sudden, huge, extraordinarily productive and fun last third of his career. So his third act in life was fantastic. I don't know if anybody's heard the story of his funeral. I couldn't go because I was working, but it was he had moved to Florida because he was crazy, and he kept moving away to wherever that had lower taxes, as though he ever actually spent his money. I mean, he was a little nuts. Anyway, he died and he was in Florida, and so he demanded that there be an open casket because he thought people ought to see what that old dead guy looks like. Not only that, but there was a police motorcycle escort playing the theme from Police Academy, I guess, or anyhow. And he had a few speeches, but the best part about it was Barbara was his wife, his widow now, had a list. He'd given her a list of people that she had to identify as they came to the open casket to pay respects. And hidden inside the casket was a fart machine, because that was his kind of signature thing, is he had this he would make these fart noises. And so the people would be coming along and they'd be all choked up and crying. And then there'd be this huge fart, and then they get, "Oh, Leslie, damn you." And then they'd move along. And Barbara just kept going down the list as the people came along that were identified that deserved a fart upon his demise. That's maybe the best Leslie story of all. Go out on a fart. He was fantastic to work with. Great dramatic actor, tireless when we were working, like just keep going, even at his age, which was quite advanced. and really funny, like really funny. He could take anything and make it funny, which is sort of a bit of a thing for him. He said, you know, the problem is anything can be funny. And he was right. Oh, I seem to have lost you altogether. I wonder if I should try to come back on. Hello? Uh-oh.
Hello, Paul. Are you seeing me again? I am very sorry we had a bit of a technical error my end of things. I'm glad to have you back now. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I didn't know if you were, what had happened.
Okay, so sorry for everyone for the brief pause. I think they could still hear you, hopefully. But we're now on my iPad. Anyway, getting on to our next question. This is from Lucy Caton, and she's asked, what was it like working with the dogs who played Diefenbaker? And I will actually give a quick shout out to my dog, Benton, who's named after your character.
Ah, that's lovely. Well, there are quite a number of dogs, as is common with any kind of show, or whether you use horses, you usually have doubles, they call them. And so it kind of depended on which dog was around, but they were all wonderful. They're dogs. You know, some of them are more inventive than others. Some are more obedient than others. Some are easier to train. Some are smarter. Some are dumber. But they all have their own quality, I think. The one we had towards the end was really lovely because that dog was quite funny. It would Draco was his name, I think, and he would just make stuff up. That dog it would ad lib. I remember walking down a hallway, doing one of those conversations with, I guess with Callum, and we'd have those long conversations in the police station. And Draco's, for the rehearsal, was running right alongside me. And then as soon as the camera's on, he runs along. And as he's going, he jumps up onto a bench and runs along up onto a table and then comes down and keeps going. I thought that's like, he knows when the camera's on and he knows when he's going to show off. And then there were some of the dogs who would kind of sit, eventually became kind of bewildering. It's quite a lot for a dog to do. I mean, they have a lot of responsibility on the set. And the thing about them is mostly the actor is not the one who is interacting with the dog. It is mostly the trainer. The dog's eyes are on. So you have to figure out where to position the trainer in order to shoot stuff. I mean, sometimes we would interact with them, but a lot of the time they're going to work. They're working dogs.
Yeah. Lucy also asked where you played Benton and him, like we discussed before, about kind of like a whiter than white kind of character he was. Were there any expectations, did you feel, when you met people, when you were playing him, when you met the fans? And did anyone have any expectations of you as a result?
I don't. Yeah, I kind of did feel that from time to time, and I think it's one of those things that sometimes can happen in television or movies where you get confused with the character that you're playing, as though you inhabit the same qualities as that character, and then of course there's nobody like Benton, really. I mean, I've never run across anyone like that. There are aspects of me that are in him, but there are aspects of me that he doesn't have, which is why he's a great character and I am not. I think there's that. Because but the thing about and particularly then in those days when people would watch it kind of once a week, not kind of, would watch it once a week, and the family would gather together with friends or whatever, and that becomes part of your life. It's someone who lives in your life with you. The movies are a little bit different because you go and it's a completed experience, and you may love that actor, but you do kind of love that actor almost more than the character. Whereas I think in television, say you love that character because you've adopted him into your life. And that's just, I didn't realize that until I kind of was doing this and doing this part. And I thought, oh yeah, of course. And then it's quite releasing. Like I didn't feel any responsibility to be as perfect, but you know, it's a wonderful feeling actually that you're part of something that people have embraced. It really does make going to work fabulous. It's like way better than going to work and doing something that people hate.
I mean, the thing I love about that, and again, like in Men with Brooms, you kind of brought in a lot of kind of Canada in there. And was there a consciousness about kind of how you portrayed Canada in that show and in that film?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were very aware of that. Canadian iconography is kind of funny. I mean, that our national animal symbol is a beaver, which is an odd looking animal and appears on our coins, and that there is this sort of the lumberjacks, that all of that stuff that is kind of the cliche of Canada is really hilarious, and it's great. And it's not something that most Canadians, we mostly live in cities, so we're not mostly out in the woods hacking down giant trees. But the iconography of it is great. And I think it does ultimately kind of reflect a certain spirit about the country that we do have, but it is symbolic, you know. And so I think we were pretty aware of it. And then it actually took quite tactile form. That I think this is true, at least for the first year. I'm not sure if it continued, but in the crew, I didn't know about this until quite late, but there was a Canadian penny in every shot that we ever did, somewhere hidden on the set. And I remember how I found out about it, because we're all ready to do this take of something, and the camera is going to push in on me, and I'm going to say something, and they're just about to call action. Go, oh, hang on. A guy ran in, and he sort of stuck something on the side of a table, and I said, "What is that?" It was a penny. I said, "What's this?" "I'll explain to you later." Well, there always had to be, in every single shot, not just every scene, in every shot, there had to be a penny somewhere, which seems ridiculous, but I think it was kind of like, I don't know, like dogs peeing on something. It's ours. It's Canadian.
I think the genius about the Canadian sense of humor is what I enjoy about the British sense of humor as well. Like, no one can take the mickey out of us like we can. If someone else is doing it, if we're doing it, it's funny. That's
right. We're really defensive if someone's making fun of us, but we are good at
it. And a question from Lenka. She's asked, what was the primary motive or idea behind making Passchendaele? When did this story first come to you?
Oh, it just started years and years and years ago with my grandfather, who had been in the First World War, and we had many long conversations about his time there, but he didn't talk about it mostly for most of his life until I was about 15, I think, and we were fishing, and I'd been badgering about what was it like, but also like a 15-year-old dumb question, like, did you kill Germans? And, although I think I might have been quite interested in that because I'm part of my heritage is German. And I think that's odd. I've got both in one. Like, how are these enemies? And anyway, he did start talking. it was harrowing. Stories were terrible. Also, some of them were very funny. A lot of them were him trying to reconstruct where they moved the regiment around. But yeah, it was not. It was a terrible, grisly experience for the human race. But it got me quite fascinated, and so I've been reading stuff about it and thinking about it, I suppose, for most of my life. And then somewhere along the road, I started thinking that it would be a good idea to try to do something with it. And at first I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it would be a play because I was writing plays at the time. But gradually I started thinking it could be a film. And then I started writing on it. And then it took years to pull all of the money together. But that's been with me for a long time.
Yeah. Have you got enough time for a few more? I am aware we're over our time already.
Sure. COVID. I have not. I have to go chop wood. Literally, I do have to go chop wood.
Now you see, like, you're playing into the stereotype. I didn't bring it up. Christina Tina Martinson has put. I have another one. You're filming Why the Last Man at the moment, and she hears that the filming still continues. She's seen it on Twitter. So, have you got anything you can tell us about that?
Oh, The Last Man? I'm not sure. I think I signed something where I'm not allowed to talk about it. I'm not kidding you. They're very secretive. I think it's Disney or FX, which I think Disney owns. All I can tell you is it looked amazing. The director is fantastic. A woman from Denmark. I just loved her. And it has great actors in it, including one of the most wonderful, Diane Lane, who I had a couple of scenes with, who's just a great person. So I think it looks pretty good. The bits and pieces that I've seen. Honestly, I think I'm not allowed to actually tell you any more than that.
Okay, well that will do us very nicely.
Shoot me. I think that's right. Yeah, I think I signed something that said I can't talk about it, and if I do, then they're allowed to shoot me. I think I signed that. Yeah.
I'm going to bundle a couple of questions together here. So, Rowan Taziz, sorry, I'm going to butcher these names. Rowan Taziz has asked about working with Paul Haggis, but what I wanted to sort of like know a bit about was what was it like kind of working with Paul Haggis on the earlier series of Due South, and then later on you taking a more active role in producing the show.
Working with Paul was great. We were great. We were a great team. We were good, extremely good friends. We really share a similar sense of humor, and also I think he was as bewildered by the character that he'd written as I was. So I asked him questions early on. Well, do I not know that these people are bad guys? Yes. But then why am I doing them this way? Because you think they could be better. Does that make any sense to you? No. Okay. Am I a virgin? I don't. Because there's so little that we actually knew, and in a sense we're kind of uncovering it as we went along. So I would go to him and say, I think he's this, and he'd go, oh yeah, okay, and then that would start to appear in the character. So it was wonderful. I mean, Paul worked his heart. He is a real perfectionist, and but I did learn a tremendous amount from him. Which is the number one thing is don't leave a scene until you think you have it, because there's a tremendous pressure in shooting. There's both time and financial. Is that you just keep, you got to finish early or you got to finish on time. But it's more important that you actually get the scene right. Then you make a schedule. So assuming that you're organized and you're not frittering time away, then stay on it. Make sure you have it. And then the other thing he taught me too is also about writing fast. I was a very slow writer. Now I'm returned to being slow, but then I got quick for a while. But in the television format, you have to write very quickly because you have to produce so much material. And I learned something. I mean, he said, no, it's important because actually then you're not filtering everything. You're not editing ideas out before you can get them out there. And the ones that you might have edited might be land on the page, and you realize actually they're good because they're more instinctive. And so that was really important, particularly when I took it over, because I was writing a lot. I did all of the final production drafts, but I also wrote quite a number of them. And yeah, you just have to develop a skill where you can go. So it's a little less intellectual. It's a lot more kind of follow your instincts, and more often than not, they'll be good. And once in a while, they'll be great. And occasionally they will suck. But you get to figure those out. But you have to get to the end of the script. Otherwise, nobody knows. If you don't finish the script, the crew doesn't know what to do. They don't know how many cars we're going to need, how many other people we need in the background, what to paint, what color to paint the rooms. You know, like you have to get that done quickly. And, you know, general organizational. Paul wasn't particularly well organized. Because that's the other thing. You do kind of learn things from people where you think, well, if I ever ended up doing this, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do. So I learned some things from him. He's like, you need a good night's sleep. He just said the most erratic pattern of working of anyone I've ever known. They didn't have a clock. So he would go sort of 12 hours and then sleep for 5 and then go for 8, sleep for 10. And plus I couldn't really do that because I was in all the scenes. So I had to be on the set. But no, he was a really important creative partnership, that one that has had lasting kind of effects. Not much of which I could specifically point to, but I know that I feel that having met him, because it also hit for him, it comes down out of a long lineage. You know, he started out writing for Norman Lear. So he's had all of these other people that he's encountered as well. And then that's kind of how it works, I guess, is that you take all of what you know, and you pass it to me, and then I give it on to others, and on down it goes until it's diluted to the point of meaninglessness. No.
And I'd just like to ask about like the last episode. Like, what was like, kind of, first of all, kind of just going into doing that last episode, and do you have any particular memories?
The up in the mountains, you mean? And yeah.
Well, recording the last episode and saying goodbye to that character after all those years.
Yeah, it was really it was weird. I mean, we shot the mountain stuff before we shot the finished off shooting. So we finished off shooting in Toronto. Oh, hello, Pooch.
This is Benton.
Hello, Benton. What a beautiful dog.
Where you got your name from?
The mountain stuff was amazing. I mean, it was like this great, beautiful, kind of crazy holiday that we all got to have on the final episode of the show. And some of it was absolutely screamingly funny, and some of it was quite wistful and melancholy. And then the last day of shooting was really strange. It was just a weird feeling. I mean, partly, I suppose, that sense of, are we doing the right thing to stop now? And I felt ultimately yes, because I was, started to run out of really great ideas, and the fear just retreads more than anything.
Yeah.
But it also was really emotional for everybody, because it was still basically the same group of people that we've been working with from the beginning. And so people were crying about 5 shots an hour and a half before we finished, because everyone was starting to slowly fall apart. And then I hadn't particularly planned anything to say, and George Bloomfield was the director of the last one, and he gave the most beautiful speech at the end. And it was great. The old uncle of the show just wrapped it all up for us. It was beautiful. And I think we all were aware that we've been working on something that we were very lucky to experience and may never repeat, because there are lots of okay shows or good shows, but it's rare that you have something that has that kind of spirit in the work environment.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful.
And I know there might be some issues with the music rights for it going to streaming, but John Wright, our friend who does the Due South events, has asked, have you got any insider knowledge about a Blu-ray 4K high-res version of Blue South coming to home video?
I don't. I'm way away from. I don't know. Might be, but I have no idea.
Okay, I said I'd ask. He helped me sort out this interview.
I think we were still on 35 millimeter.
Yeah.
That we weren't even on a digital camera in those days. So.
I think actually, I think I've heard that if it's on camera, they can do more to res it up. It's something to do with the way it's filmed. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you can do transfers from celluloid to. I mean, we did all of the post and digital. It's just the actual recording of the picture was on old style film. Which also gives it a great kind of look. That there's any number of different reasons why shooting in digital is better, but there is a particular kind of look to celluloid that I think is pretty hard to replicate. In the same way that there's a particular sound to an actual LP than there is to an computer file. So.
Sarah's asked a question.
I don't know.
Sarah,
could be. You never know.
We can only hope. Sarah Hudson's asked, and this is what I was going to ask you about. Now, I know there's going to be lots of our female viewers, and who knows, maybe some of our male ones who would love a Valentine's message from Paul Gross. So if you'd like to just give some sort of Valentine's message out to the folks out there. And if you want to aim at a Nicola, I would score brownie points.
How do you make that? There you go.
That'll do it nicely. And Max Jim Roosevelt has put, what's your favorite drink, alcoholic or non? And what's your ice hockey team if you're a fan? Probably too late, but you never know. No, you can get it in.
I don't drink now, but I think it was always probably just beer. I'm kind of a beer guy. And when I was feeling fancy, really expensive wine, those days are done. I don't have a team now. I used to have, for a long time, it was the Edmonton Oilers until they sold Gretzky to Los Angeles, of all places. Like if they had sold Gretzky to one of the original six, like Detroit or New York, I would have still probably stuck with the Oilers. But I was so mad with them, I couldn't support them. And now I don't have a team. I mean, I should have Toronto, but Toronto is supporting the Toronto Maple Leafs is really an act of constant, lifelong futility. And I have friends who are great Toronto Maple Leaf fans. And I did actually one year get them all. I got a miniaturized version of the Book of Job. This interminable suffering for which there is no explanation and you will never understand it. And I just gave it to all of them. You need to read this at the beginning of the season. So you'll have some reference point when you are laid low by disappointment and sorrow. Yet again. No, I don't have a squad.
Well, while we're on hockey, though, I mean, Hockey of People's History was an amazing documentary which you narrated. I have to say, like, when you hear at the beginning of that documentary, it talks about how Canada was sort of founded around hockey. And I was thinking, oh, that's hyperbole. That's, just like with any sport, they're just building it up too much. But when you break down the story, it is amazing how hockey really did bring the country of Canada together as it was founding. What was it like to work on that documentary?
Oh, it was wonderful. That was documentaries are so much fun to do because there's all sorts of stuff you just have no idea about, and it was a documentary that I would like to watch. So yeah, and it is an extraordinary thing about what hockey did. It's changing now as it's more internationalized. Half the league now have foreign players, and a lot more Americans are playing than they used to. And the system for producing hockey players in Canada is going through a lot of uncertainty and change. So it's quite a bit different than when I was younger. But it is still something, when the Olympics roll around, it's the one thing that will draw this whole country immediately together. Is if we're not in that gold round, we kill ourselves. And it's not like, I don't think the UK feels that anymore if they're not going to win the World Cup. But we still think we should.
FA Cup, though.
No, FA.
Still, yeah. We still get very, very.
We're entitled to it, which is a bit weird. Like,
if we get within a whiff of the World Cup, though, it's ours already, and no matter how much we get hurt every time.
Well, then we took on curling because we thought, well, we'll always win that, so we can support curling. But actually, there are now lots of countries that are curling really well. Like the Japanese are extremely good at it. Now there's all this nervousness, so we'll try to invent some other sport that we can dominate at with such a small population.
You see, you've finally cottoned on to the English way of things. We invent the sports, win at it until other countries discover
People,
them much better than us, and then we have to invent more. That's how
yeah,
it works. It was the Scottish who invented curling, and then you guys take it off, and now we have to come up with something new.
that's right. Darts. I think you're still killing at that.
I think so. I think we got darts. There's one here, like this is just representative of what a lot of people have said, but I think this is a lovely story. I'd just like to kind of quickly read this to you. Cynthia Stokes has put, I don't have a question. I would just like to say thank you for your role in playing Benton Fraser. I don't think anyone could have done a better job. I was young when Due South was on. I was bullied very badly during that time, and I fell into a deep depression. I didn't want to live anymore, which was sad for an 11-year-old to think. Teachers even encouraged the bullying and added their own to it. Due South was a saving grace. Fraser seemed like so much like me, nice, and everyone made fun of him, but he was still him. He didn't let what people thought about him get to him or let him down for too long. To this day, I still watch my favorite episodes when I feel down. Thank you for being you. I know Fraser is a character, but I've watched other things starring you. But for personal reasons, Due South will always be my favorite TV show. Now, that's a sentiment which comes from a lot of people I know, and I felt very similar when I watched Due South. What is it like just for all these years later for the show to be so celebrated, and why do you think we're still kind of like so in awe of the show today?
Well, first of all, that's really beautiful. That's a wonderful letter, and thank you. And I'm glad you're through that period. Yeah, it's kind of an astonishing thing, because you don't honestly think that when you're making something. Your concerns are really immediate, and they're whatever is right in front of your head or your face. And so it's hard to imagine while you're doing it, oh, this will go out and it will mean something to people. Or you're not really even imagining that. I don't know how to describe it. You'd think somehow that we would have a sense of what the impact of the show might be, but you don't really. And what has really been astonishing is the enduring quality of it. I found that to be, well, actually, I still don't quite understand it. I mean, I do understand the heart of it, and I understand the hopefulness at the center of it, but I'm not quite sure I understand its longevity. I was shooting a movie that I was directing the war in Afghanistan, and we were shooting in Jordan. And the first morning I got in Aqaba, into the hotel, and I got up early and flipped on to like 4 channels, and one of them was running Due South at 8 o'clock in the morning. In Arabic, dubbed in Arabic, which is kind of a trip to watch, I think. Sounded really good in Arabic. But it's sort of hard to, I still find that a little difficult to, I don't have an answer for it, really. I don't know why. I mean, I think there is somehow we caught some quality of, such a good quality of humanity that it does endure. Because we need that. We need to have more of that in our lives. We have too many examples of the opposite of that. But that's about as close as I can get to an explanation. I will say, it is an extraordinarily humbling and wonderful thing to know that you were part of something that has affected people positively and continues to do so. And it's a very rare thing for people in my profession to encounter, I can tell you. And it means a lot to all of us who are involved.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for the show, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to thank your agent Penny for being so wonderful in setting this up, as well as to John Wright from the Due South events who put us in touch. I think I'd just like to echo what has been said there, that shows like Due South really do help people through some very dark times, and you being here, I know, will have made a difference to a lot of people. So thank you kindly. And before we go, if you wouldn't mind just wrapping this up, I was going to get you to record this like afterwards, but we can use this as the sign off to the show. So if you wouldn't mind just saying, this is Paul Gross, and you're listening to Due South by Southeast Thank you kindly, and we'll go out the show.
Sure. This is Paul Gross, and you're listening to Due South by Southeast. Thank you kindly.
And thank you kindly. Good night, everyone.